Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our today's episode. Today, our guest speaker is Holly Prescott, and let me briefly introduce her before we start. She's a higher education careers professional specializing in supporting postgraduate and early career researchers to understand their skills, options, and the value they can bring to various sectors. Holly has 10 years of experience covering career guidance and coaching, industrial liaison, postgraduate student recruitment, and higher education teaching and lecturing. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we are glad to have you here today. So, if you have some words before we start, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Gulnara. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really pleased to be joining you today. So, as Gulnara said, I'm Holly. I'm a career guidance practitioner who specialises in working with PhD researchers and sometimes postdocs as well. I work at the University of Birmingham in the UK, which is where I am at the moment. I did a PhD in English literature. Between 2008 and 2011. And since then, I've completely retrained and now I focus on helping PhD researchers think about and take their next steps after their PhD. I'm very glad to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you so much. And let's start with the questions. So, the first question is: how does the Careers Network at the University of Birmingham support PhD students to transition into their next career stage? So, I would like to kind of talk about this because this is also example that how Careers Network at the universities work and how PhD students can get support from them. So, stage is yours.
Sure, of course. So Careers Network is the name of our career service at the University of Birmingham, and it supports students of all levels. But I am the dedicated careers advisor and I just work with postgraduate researchers. We're quite lucky actually to have a full-time position just focused on working with with the postgraduate researchers. So the ways that we support PhD students to take their next steps are work in several ways. So I do some of the things you might automatically think of when you think of a careers advisor, for example, one-to-one guidance appointments where PhDs can come to me with all kinds of questions, everything from I've got no idea what to do with my life, help, all the way through to I might have some options in mind, but I want to talk about them, all the way through to helping people with job applications, interview preparation, and also helping people with more specific questions, things like, for example, how to talk about a disability or a health condition to an employer and things like that. But it's not just one-to-one work that I do. So we, in the Careers Network, we run several event series for PGRs. One's dedicated to careers beyond academia, one's dedicated to careers within academia. And both of those event series have an online course that accompany them, that people can work through in their own time, talk them through the process of preparing, planning, and taking action towards your next steps. We do some other quite exciting things as well because we're aware that it helps to support PhD researchers in understanding what their options are, but sometimes some of them don't have very much experience beyond academia and want to develop their skills, understand more what the structure of work is like outside of academia as well. So we run what we call consultancy challenges, which is where our PGRs work in teams with other researchers to solve a problem that's set by a company or an organization in a week-long competition. They get lots of training in things like consultancy skills, business planning, and things like that. And so, as well as the kind of guidance and support, there's real life projects you can get involved in that will give you experience for your CV as well.
Okay, this sounds like a lot of opportunity and a lot of benefit that PhD students can get. I will also, after this talk, I will also get interested in our university career network. So let's see. And the next question is, how can PhD students sell their skills to employers outside academia? So as we know, the having the lots of skills or like high skills still may not be enough if we don't know how to show off them, how to sell them. So, and as a researchers in academia, I know like from myself that we are lacking of this kind of skills. So, can you please give us some tips about this? How can we sell our skills?
Of course. I think the first thing to say is that in order to sell the skills you've got from a PhD beyond academia, you first need to recognize what those skills are. And I think sometimes we're not too good at doing that because I think sometimes being in an academic culture can encourage us to focus a lot on what we don't have and what we lack rather than what we do have. We're so used to a culture of our work being critiqued and being told what we can do better. Um, so the first thing is really to understand the skills that you do have as a PhD that you may be taking for granted because you just think about the things you do day to day as a PhD researcher that you just do automatically without thinking. So you might, for instance, be in a lab designing experiments, carrying out experiments, but you might also have to be managing some supplies in that lab. You might be teaching undergraduates, you might be demonstrating, helping other people use that lab as well. You might be presenting at conferences. You might be having meetings with your supervisor, negotiating where the project's going, presenting to the rest of your lab group. Or if you're in the humanities, you might be doing literature searching, hunting for research in your field. You might be using archives or libraries or things like that. If you just think about all those things, and to you, that's just second nature. That's just what you do. So you might not appreciate how many skills are bound up in that. Let's just take something really simple, for example, like writing a literature review. To do that, well, first of all, you need to identify literature in your field. You need to use targeted search terms. You need to become familiar with online databases. You need to find effective ways of sifting through that information, synthesizing it, and putting it together in a way that identifies trends, how things have done before, and then using that to form some kind of conclusion. So you see all of those skills just in one little thing. So what I would encourage you to do, because I think this can sometimes be difficult, is what I usually encourage PhD researchers to do to articulate their skills is to actually think about, okay, if you were going to go off on some kind of sabbatical and you had to hire someone to replace you on your PhD, what would they need to be able to do? And you can write it out as if it's a job description. And that will help you to get to grips with the things you're good at and the things that person would need to be good at who's coming and replacing you. I think sometimes it can be easier to think about your skills in terms of from the second person, like you will need this, rather than in the first person. I have this skill, I have this skill. It's like sometimes imposterism can come in, and that's a good way to think about it. So I'd encourage you to do that. I've actually got an article here that I wrote that I can share with you that talks you through how to do that. So what I encourage you to do, in short, is number one, to articulate your skills. Step back from the details and the subject area of what you're researching. Step back from that. And number two, think about the processes that are actually involved in you doing your research. All of those things that I just mentioned: searching, synthesizing information, writing, forming arguments, making conclusions, those kinds of things. So think about the processes that go into your research rather than the subject, and that will help you to unpick and to break it down and to see that you are showing some really good skills in your research that, as I say, you might be taking for granted.
Okay, thank you so much. They are really great tips. The next question. What are the career opportunities for PhDs outside academia?
Hmm. Wow, it's a big question. They're so varied. And the career opportunities that you will have outside of academia depend on your subject area, your skills, and also what you want to do. But in my experience, I think that you can break down what PhDs go on to do outside of academia into four different groups. Okay, so number one, what I'm seeing at the moment is a growing number of PhD graduates moving into what I call academic adjacent careers. Okay, if you don't know what I mean by that, or you haven't heard that term before, then I'll just pop there's an explanation in the chat there. But what I mean by this is roles in universities that aren't traditional research or teaching. So roles like mine, for example, in careers, or in research support, or in academic librarianship, or things like that. So thinking about other roles within university and academic environments that aren't traditional research or teaching, because they can really value your PhD, would be one group. The next group would be thinking about options that use your research skills. So that could be specific lab techniques, for example. If you're a social scientist or a humanist, it could be thinking about your qualitative research skills, and then thinking about what kinds of employers would use those. Industrial labs, for example, research agencies, government departments, policy fields. So that second group of options is thinking about your research skills and where you can transfer those. The third group would be thinking about your broader subject knowledge and whether there are roles you can move into with that. For example, if you've been doing a PhD in history or heritage, working for an organisation that represents that kind of a field. So thinking about the broader subject area you're attached to and roles that could be linked to that. And then finally, I would say the last group of opportunities for careers outside of academia are what I call anything goes, which is there are lots of opportunities out there where you can move away from your subject area and even move away from research, but use your more general skills that you've developed, things that we've talked about: writing, editing, communication skills, career areas. And this is where I'll give you some examples. I've seen a PhD in ancient history move into accounting. I've seen a philosophy PhD move into software development. I've seen a chemistry PhD move into coaching and training. So really broad, but they're using their more general skills to move over into quite a career change. So those would be the main four groupings, like academic adjacent, research careers, careers with your subject, or careers with your transferable skills. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, thank you so much. So, our last question. How frequently do students ask you for one-on-one consultation to help them with career choices?
They do ask for that relatively frequently. I'm quite limited to how many one-to-ones I can offer. For example, at my university, we have a community of around 4,000 PhD students, and I can only offer a maximum of 6 appointments a week. So I'm quite limited, but yeah, there is a high demand for one-to-ones, and it's a range of things. I think the most common things that people want to talk to me about are things like, when I started my PhD, I thought I wanted an academic career. Now I think I've changed my mind. So, what else can I do? It might be people saying, I want to explore careers beyond academia, but I don't know where to start. And have no network outside of academia. How can I work on that? And those are very common questions, as well as people wanting support with applications, interviews, and things like that.
Okay. And at the University of the Birmingham, are you only one like a career consultant, or there are many people?
Good question. So I'm the only careers advisor who works specifically with PhD students. We do, however, have a team. We've got a team of around 10 other careers consultants and careers advisors. Most of our other careers staff are attached to a faculty. So they will specialise in advising students from a particular faculty, but they mostly focus on undergraduate and master's students. I'm the only careers advisor dedicated to working with the postgraduate researchers.
Okay, I think that at this point, maybe it would be a good idea that universities may increase the number of people who give advice to the PhD students, because as you mentioned, there are like maybe more than 4,000 PhD students at the university. So it's kind of challenging for one person to answer all the questions. So yeah, that is kind of how to say, something to do with the universities to change the system a bit. Yeah, and thank you so much for all the answers. And I'm just checking if we have some comments from the LinkedIn or YouTube or the questions. So I can't see any for now. And yeah, if any of our viewers have some questions, please ask. We are ready to answer them. We can just wait maybe 2 minutes or so.
Just to add to what you just said, Gulnara, yeah, I agree. I'd love to see more staff dedicated to working with PhDs. But I think in the UK, we're lucky to have a full-time person. In some universities, looking after the PhD students might just be half of one person's job. So you might be working on 2 days, 3 days a week for someone. So I am lucky I get to do it full time, but having more help would be brilliant.
Yeah, because students, like how to say, in the final year, they are just so confusing. They are so boring that what will be the next step? And probably you have also heard the recent news. It's such a, I don't know, like negative news about like how the PhD students charge for the consultation services
Mm.
and such a high price. And but however, like universities, if they offer such service, so PhDs wouldn't spend that much money, and they would just get this service for free. So maybe like I have seen some kind of the projects or comments that maybe this kind of consultation services would have some partnership with the universities, that they may offer their services to them. So it's kind of university would pay for them, but yeah, not students. That would be great, I guess.
That would be great. Yeah, for those companies to have more a partnership model with universities, yeah, where we could pay and for that. I think the problem there is, unfortunately, I have no budget attached to my role. So I have no money to spend, sadly. However, we are branching out into that, particularly for international students. We have recently at my university paid for a subscription to a careers platform called Student Circus that is dedicated to helping international students, including PhDs, find jobs in the UK. So that's one example there where we pay the subscription so the students don't have to pay for the service. But yeah, I agree that partnership model, I think, could benefit a lot of people. Um, we'd as long as we had access to funding in the universities to pay for it.
Yeah, that's also another, I think, challenge for the universities to get funding, to have funding. That's also, yeah, there are many challenges in academia, unfortunately. Okay, I see no comment or question from the live stream. So yeah, thank you so much to be here today. It was great to have you, and our talk, I think, like was very insightful, was very useful. And yeah, if students have some questions, they can leave it to the LinkedIn page, and we will answer there. So yeah, thank you so much, and see you guys next Friday with the new topic and with the new guest.
Thank
Bye.
you, Lara. Thank you, everyone.